Today's Daf Yomi is Yevamos Daf Lamed, Yevamos 30. Today's Daf Yomi, we have four Mishnayos that talk about three brothers who are married to two sisters, and the third brother is married to a woman who's not their sister. So let's call the brothers the same for every case. Reuven and Shimon are married to two sisters, Rachel and Leah, and then the third brother, Levi, is married to a third woman who we'll call Sarah. Sarah is not related otherwise to Rachel and to Leah. So the first case is Shlosha Achim. Let's say you have three brothers, Reuven and Shimon, Shnai Mem Nesuim, Shtei Achios. They're married to Rachel and Leah. The Echad Nasoi Nachris. And the third brother, Levi, is married to a non-relative, i.e. to Sarah. Meis Echad Mibali Achios. Let's say one of the husbands who was married to Rachel or Leah, i.e., let's say Reuven, dies, and then as a result of this, Levi marries Rachel. Levi does Yibum with Rachel, Umeis, and then after that, after Levi marries Rachel, after that, Umeis, and then Levi dies. So Harishona, so Yotze Mishum Achos Isha. So Rachel, who was the wife of Reuven, and then did Yibum with Levi, she does not fall to Yibum with Shimon because she is the sister of Shimon's wife, and that is an erva, and so she's the sister of Leah, Ushnia, and the second woman, i.e., Sarah is the co-wife of Rachel, and so therefore she's also not going to fall to Yibum or Chalitza Misham Tzarasa, because she's the co-wife of Rachel, who's an erva. Says the Gemara, also by Maimer, let's say Levi had not actually done Yibum with Rachel. He had just done Maimer with her. He had betrothed her. Mace. So it was not a full betrothal. It was not a full marriage. It was a betrothal. Mace. And then he dies. So under those circumstances, we say, since we're not sure if she's really the co-wife, we're not sure if Sarah is really the co-wife of Rachel, because Rachel only had Maimer with Sarah's husband. So therefore, under those circumstances, Sarah is going to not be allowed to do Yibum, but she does Chalitza, out of concern that maybe the Maimer was not effective at all. If the Maimer had been effective, she wouldn't require Chalitza or Yibum, but we're not sure if it was effective, so we're not going to allow her to do Yibum, but we also require Chalitza. So the Gemara says, Time of Dava Bar Maimer. What's the reason why she requires Chalitza here? Because there was at least something there, but it wasn't enough to say that she's released without anything. But if Maimer had not been done at all, then indeed this woman who's not related, who's not a sister of Rachel, would actually, since there's no Maimer, she would actually do completely Yibum. So meaning to say, this teaches us that if without the Maimer, it would be like nothing was going on. That Rachel, even though Rachel fell to Yibum with Levi, it would be like there was no connection. So Rav Nachman teaches us, Zos Omeres Ein Zika. This teaches us that there's no connection there. There's no Zika, Vafilu B'chad Acha, even with one brother. Because since Rachel can fall to Yibum with Shimon, so she's only falling to Yibum with one brother, i.e. Levi. And so even though she has a Zika with Levi, it's not enough. It wouldn't be enough, according to this Mishnah, for Sarah to be released without Yibum or Chalitza. Of course, Sarah to be considered the co-wife of an erva. So that's the first Mishnah, and that's Rav Nachman Shita. Remember Rav Nachman Shita, because we will be returning to it on this Daf. The next Mishnah tells us Shlosha Achim. Let's say you have two brothers, Shnayim Mehem Nesuim Shtei Achios. So Reuven and Shimon are married to Rachel and Leah, two sisters. And Levi marries Sarah. So then Levi dies. Vikanas Echad Mibali Achios, and Reuven marries Sarah. That's Ishto. He marries Sarah Umeis, and now Reuven dies. So Harishona Yotzeis Mishum Achos Isha. So Rachel, who was called the Rishona in the last Mishnah, she's also called the Rishona here. She's going to be released because she is the sister of Leah, so she's going to be released. Ushnia, and the second woman is released, i.e., the co-wife is released, i.e., Sarah Mishum Sarasa, because she's the co-wife. Also, by Ma'amar Omeis, well, let's say Reuven had not actually taken Sarah and Yibam, but he just did Ma'amar with her, and then he dies. Nachris Choletzes V'Omas Yabemes. Under those circumstances, Sarah does Chalitza, not Yibam, because maybe the Ma'amar was not effective, and then she would fall to Yibam with Shimon, and so therefore we require Chalitza. But if it would be completely effective, then she wouldn't be allowed to do Yibam or Chalitza. So we wouldn't allow her to do Yibam. We require Chalitza. So the Gemara says, but isn't this essentially the same case as the first Mishnah? Hasu Lamli, we're in the middle of 30a. Isn't this the same case? Hainu Hach. Why do we need it? It's the same case. The Gemara says, and not only that, it's even less of a chiddush than the first case, because in the first Mishnah, in that case, the first Mishnah that we did on the Daf, the Achos Isha Havet Tzara L'Nachris, that the one who was the sister of the co-wife, the one who was the sister of the other wife, of Shimon's wife, she was actually the co-wife to the Nachris. She was the co-wife to Sarah, who was married to Levi. And still we said under those circumstances, Amris Nachris Asura, we said that the co-wife herself became prohibited. Hacha, the Nachris Havet Tzara L'Achos Isha, that here the co-wife is the one who became the non-relative, is the co-wife to the one who is the sister of the Achos Isha. She's the one who is the co-wife to the one who is the sister of Shimon's wife. Kol Shekain, for sure in this case, she's going to be considered the Achos Isha, and she would be an Erva. So therefore, why do we have to list both these cases? So the Gemara tells us about historically how the development of the Mishnah. So first, what happened was Tana Hach Tana Beresha. At first, we learned our case where Sarah became the co-wife of Rachel, who was the Erva to Leah. And then the Hachaz Tera. And we said in this case, and we said in the other case where Rachel became the co-wife to Sarah, that in that case we said actually Rachel would be allowed to do Yibam or Chalitza with Shimon, because she just became the co-wife. That we would say that Sarah would become permitted because she was initially married to Levi before Rachel became her co-wife. But then afterwards, V'hadar Chazul Asura. But then the Mishnah reversed itself. We said actually no, Sarah is going to be prohibited in both cases. But he was so proud. The Mishnah, whenever it makes a chiddush, it's so beloved to it. Aktamar, put the chiddush Mishnah first. Mishnah and then once they have a Mishnah in its place, we don't change it, because the way the Mishnah used to be taught it was all memorization. So we're not going to change anything because it'll mess up the memory process. So now we say a third thing. The third Mishnah, which is basically essentially the same. Essentially the same case, but obviously with a wrinkle. Let's say you have three brothers, and two of them are married to two sisters. And one of them is married to a non-relative. So you have three brothers, two of them are married to two sisters, and one of them is married to a non-relative. Again, what's this case again? Let's just go slow. You have Reuben, Shimon, and Levi, and Reuben and Shimon are married to two sisters, Rachel and Shimon, and Levi is married to a non-relative. So let's say then Reuven dies, Vikanas Nasai Nachris as Ishto, and Levi does Yibam with Rachel. Mesa Ishto Shel Sheni. And then at that point, Leah dies. Leah is the wife of Shimon. So V'achar Meis Nasai Nachris. So now, after that, Levi dies. So who's left alive? Left alive is Shimon to do Yibum, possibly with Sarah, but can't do it because Sarah's also married. Sarah has a co-wife of Rachel, and Rachel is an erva to Leah, but Leah is no longer alive. So about this, we say Arezu Asura Lavalamis. No, because Rachel, when she fell to Yibum, was the co-wife, was a sister to Leah, who was an erva to her. She became prohibited. So therefore, she remains prohibited over Nesra of Sha'acha. So because she became prohibited, she's prohibited forever. Because there was a point where she was the sister of Leah, even though Leah is no longer alive, she's going to be prohibited forever. So Amar Rav Yehuda Marav, Rav Yehuda Marav says he taught Rav Zanamora. Sometimes he argues with the Mishnayos. He taught Kol Yevamos she'ein ani korah ba b'shas nefilo Yevama Yevolea. Any Yevama who I can't say at the outset where they fall to Yibum, when she falls to Yibum, that she could do Yibum right away. Harei he ke'eshes ach sheish labanim. Well, then she's like the wife of a brother who has children. Basura is going to be prohibited to her brothers-in-law. So Gemara says, what's Rav teaching us? This is essentially the same statement of our Mishnah. My kamashmon tanino. Isn't this what our Mishnah says? Arezu asura lavolamis, that she becomes prohibited to him forever. Because she was prohibited at one moment, she remains prohibited forever. Gemara says, no, I'll tell you the difference. You might have said, when do we say you're prohibited? If you're prohibited at one point, you're prohibited forever. We only say that where when she first fell to Yibam, the entire time her sister was alive. That's where we would say that. But maybe when she fell to Yibam, before she did Yibam with Levi, at a certain point before that, her sister died, then we might have said, I might have thought that she would become permitted down the road to Shimon. Because during that first Yibam, before she fell to Yibam, her sister had died and she theoretically could have become permitted then. Kamashma, we don't say that. The Gemara says, well, Honami Tanina, but this is also something that we've already been learned, that we've already been taught. But didn't we learn as follows? Shnei achen nesuim shtei achios. Let's say you have two. We're going to get to this in Daf Yomi. Let's say you have two brothers married to two sisters. Meis echa mehem. Let's say one of them dies. And then, after one of them dies, the wife of the second one dies. Meaning to say, Reuben and Shimon are married to Rachel and Leah. So let's say Reuben dies, and after Reuben dies, Shimon's wife Leah dies. Harezu asura lavolamis. We're still going to say, even though Shimon's wife has now died, and so Reuben's wife Rachel is no longer the sister of Shimon's wife, so she's no longer an erva. But we still say she's prohibited because she became prohibited for one moment. And so there she fell to Yibum, but before she actually acted on the Yibum, the erva disappeared. So therefore you might have thought, we already have this statement that once you're prohibited for once, you're prohibited forever. Gemara says, no, there's a distinction between the cases. It's an obvious distinction. Ma'odatemi might have said, Hasam hu de itchile mehai beisel gamri. In the case from the Mishnah Rama Beis, there she was pushed off from that house completely because there's only two brothers, and if she can't go to Yibum with him, then she's released completely to the world. But in the case of our Mishnah here, there were three brothers, so she was not able to do Yibum with one, but the third brother, she was able to do Yibum or Chalitza with him. So therefore, Ema, we might have said, Migu de Chazi Lahai Nasoi Nachris Chazi Nami Lahai. Since there was a period of time where she did become permitted to be with the third brother who was married to the non-sister, therefore I might have thought that she would also be reversed and be able to return to the second brother Shimon. So we say no, we don't say that. And now we're up to the fourth case. Shlosha Achem, let's say you have these three brothers, Reuben, Shimon, and Levi, and Shnayim Em Nesui and Shtei Achios, and two of them are married to two sisters. Echad Nasai Nachris. And the third one is married to a third sister, Sarah, who's not a relative. Girish Echad Mibali Achios is Ishto. Let's say Reuben divorces Rachel. Umeis. And then after he divorces Rachel, and then after that, Reuben dies. Well, excuse me, no. I made a mistake with that case. 3 brothers married to 2 sisters. And then the third brother is married to a third sister, to Sarah. Then Reuben divorces Rachel. So now one brother is married to one sister, and the other brother has divorced the other sister. And then what happened? So then Levi dies. The Konsa Megaresh, and Reuben does Yibum with Levi's wife Sarah. And now Reuben dies. So Zui Shamru, this is the case where Mishnah on Daf Tesvav said, Mishnah on Daf Beis listed the 15 ervas that they and their co-wives are exempt from Yibum and Chalitza. It said this is what they said: that all these cases, if they died or they were divorced, the co-wife is permitted. So in this case, where Reuben had first divorced his wife, then Sarah fell to Yibum with Reuben, and then Reuben marries Sarah. That's where we say that since he had divorced Rachel, and so therefore Sarah was never her co-wife, then we're going to say that Sarah does fall to Yibum with Shimon after Reuven dies. So the Gemara explains, but wait, let's be medayek, let's draw an inference. What's the reason why Sarah falls to Yibum here with Shimon? Because first Reuven had divorced Rachel, and only then did Reuven die. Avomeis, but and only then, did Levi die. Avomeis, but if Levi died, so meaning to say, if Sarah fell to Yibum and only then the Reuven divorced Rachel, we would say Asura, that since Sarah had a zika to Reuven while Reuven was still married to Rachel, then we're going to say she becomes prohibited to fall to Yibum with Shimon. So Amar Rav Ashi also Meres. This teaches us, unlike what Rav Nachman said above, that ain't zika. We're going to say in this case, yesh zika. There is a connection, and afilu b'treyacha, even though she has a zika with 2 different brothers, we're going to say that this concept of zika is significant enough to say that she doesn't fall to even her chalitza because she had a zika with Reuven when Reuven was married to Rachel, who is the sister of Shimon's wife Leah. So the Gemara says, "O Rav Ashi kashe de Rav Nachman." What about the difficulty that Rav Nachman raised? And the first Mishnah on their daf, we say that the reason why, if the third woman, i.e. Sarah, falls to Yibum with Levi, and Levi didn't maimer with her, in the first case in the Mishnah where Rachel falls to Yibum with Levi, who's married to Sarah, who's not the sister of Rachel, but Rachel's the sister of Leah. If Levi didn't maimer with her, then Rachel and Sarah do chalitza and not Yibum, because he didn't maimer, which means only that there is zika. So we have this problem here that but if he did not do maimer, there'd be no zika. So Rav Nachman says there's no zika from that Mishnah, whereas Rav Ashi says there is zika. So the Gemara says, what would Rav Ashi say about the case of Rav Nachman on the top Mishnah? Rav Ashi would say, no, even if Levi did not do maimer with Rachel, still we would say that his wife Sarah would be prohibited to be with Shimon. It still would be the case, even without the maimer, that his wife, i.e. Sarah, would only be able to do chalitza, but not yibum with Shimon. So why does our Mishnah mention maimer? It's not to tell us anything about zika. It's not to tell us a lot that there's no zika, but it's lafuke beishamai, but it's to take take us away from thinking that Beis Shammai is correct, because what did Beis Shammai say? Beis Shammai taught the Amar Mamar Kona Kinya Gamar. Beis Shammai is in the position that Mamar is a complete marriage, and so therefore she wouldn't even need Chalitza. So to tell us that we don't follow that position. Mashma look at Beis Shammai, or top of Lamed on the base. Mar says, or Rav Nachman Kasha to Rav Ashi, but Rav Nachman says Ein Zika. How does he deal with the case of Rav Ashi? Because what does Rav Ashi say here? Rav Ashi says that there's a Zika, and so therefore that in a case where he divorced her, and only then, in case where Levi died, and only then did Reuben divorce his wife, since they had a Zika together, since Sarah and Rachel had a Zika, Sarah will be prohibited to do Yibum or Chalitza with Shimon. So therefore, the Gemara says, how does Rav Nachman going to explain this position of Rav Ashi? If you want to say that maybe Rav Nachman would say that even if Levi first died and only then did Reuben divorce his wife, even in that case, the co-wife was permitted. Well, if that's the case, Zui Lamute Mai. If that's the case, when it says Zui in the Mishnah, what's it coming to exclude? If you want to say Lamute Kanas V'Achkach Gerish, so the Gemara says, then maybe you're saying it's coming to exclude the following case. That where he first married her, where Reuben first actually married Levi's wife, who's Sarah, and only then did he divorce his own wife, Rachel. So under those circumstances, they were actually living as co-wives together at the same time. So there we would say that they were co-wives in an effective manner, that Sarah is now going to be prohibited to Shimon when she falls to Yibam, but otherwise we wouldn't say it. So the Gemara says, well, that's only good if we follow a position of Rabbi Yirmiyah, because we had a dispute about this. We had our first Mishnah. We have a dispute between our Mishnah and the first Mishnah, or not a dispute, but it's an inelegant reading between our Mishnah and the first Mishnah on the tractate. So, Hanicha Isavra Rabbi Yirmiyah. So there were two approaches to solving this contradiction. One was the approach of Rav Yirmiyah, and one was the approach of Rav Nachman. Excuse me, one was the approach of Rava. One was the approach of Rav Yirmiyah, and one was the approach of Rava. So the Gemara says, Hanicha, we could take this approach, Isavra, if Rav Nachman holds like Rabbi Yirmiyah, who said, how do you deal with our Mishnah and the contradiction from the Mishnah 2a Tavra, that they're two separate opinions? Misha Shana Zo, Lo Shana Zo. That the one who taught our Mishnah isn't the same one who taught the Mishnah in 2a. And Vahai Tana, and the one who taught the Mishnah at the beginning of the Mishnah at the tractate Savar, he's of the position that Misa, that when the husband dies without children, that's what's mapelas. That's when the woman falls to yibum, and so therefore, a woman whose husband divorced his wife, who was, let's say, the sister of the brother, such a woman, and then he took in another wife. We're going to say that since they were not co-wives at the moment of death, she's going to be able to fall to Yibam. Whereas the Tana of our Mishnah here says, Nisuna Rishona Me'apilim. No, when do they fall to Yibam? The moment they get married. When she marries her husband, then already we're looking at it as though he's almost dead, and we're looking at the Yibam situation. And so therefore, Nisuna Rishona Me'apilim. And so therefore, we explain that the language of our Mishnah is Zui Lumiyute, that it's saying this is a case, when our Mishnah says Zuhi, this is a case that they're permitted. Lumiyute Kana Solasov Kiresh. But if they were ever living together as married couple, as co-wives, then they wouldn't fall to Yibum. But according to Rava, who says it's just one author of our Mishnah, that means to say in both cases they're prohibited. Zui lumiyute mai. So what would Rav Nachman say? So it would have to be that Rav Nachman says Rabbi Yirmiyah, that these are two Mishnayos in conflict with each other. But Rava, according to Rava, who says that the way he synthesizes the two Mishnayos is by saying that they are that according to Rava, whose other position, that it's only at the death that we're going to say that the laws of Yibum start applying. Hanichai Savrak Rav Ashi. Makes sense if he follows Rav Ashi, because he says Zui Lumute Meis Gerish. It's coming to exclude a case of a person who dies without first divorcing his wife. But Ella Isavrak Rav Nachman. But according to Rav Nachman, how would he explain Zui Lumute Mai? So we have to say that Rava says Al Karchach Rav Ashi's fairly that we have to say that Rava is in line with Rav Ashi, who says that there is Zika, and so therefore you could say that our Mishnah is coming to exclude the case of Yevamos, who fell before two brothers who were married to two sisters, that she's going to be prohibited to do Yibum because she's through Zika, she's going to be considered like his wife. And now we're going to just start very quickly the next Mishnah. So at the beginning of this tractate, we learned, remember that 29 days ago, that there were 15 relatives who are exempt from Yibum. Not only that, they're exempt, but also their co-wives are going to be exempt. Like if one of the brothers who fell to Yibum, if the other brother was a relative with his wife, there are 15 categories of relatives, 15 types of relatives, and they don't do Yibum or Chalitza, not him or his co-wife. But let's say we're not sure if there was a marriage in the first place, if that relative was actually married. Let's say we're not sure. So the Mishnah is going to define that. The Kuan Shahayu Bahen Kedushin or Gerushin Besafek. Let's say all these 15 women had a Kedushin, had a betrothal or a divorce out of doubt. And we're not sure if they were married or not. So the Mishnah is going to explain. Then under those circumstances, and the co-wives, they can't do Yibum because if they are really related, then they're not allowed to do Yibum or Chalitza. And if they're not related, then they would be required to Yibum or Chalitza. So out of a doubt, we say that all the co-wives have to do Chalitza just out of a doubt, or one co-wife in each situation has to do Chalitza out of a doubt because we don't know what's going on. Well, how would we have a doubt whether or not they're married in the first place? Gemara has a strange scenario, but let's say you know that you have to give something of monetary value. It's a dispute between Meisal and Beis Shammai. How much? Either it's just like a penny or a something worth more, Shava Pruta or more. Now Beis Shammai says it has to be more than just a Shava Pruta. So let's say you have a doubt whether, so you throw this thing of value to her, but you're not sure if it actually is closer to her, to the potential bride, or to the husband. So that's what's called a doubt of a kedushin. Ketzad safek kedushin, zarakla kedushin. You throw it to her. Safek karavla, safek karavla. Not sure if it's closer to him or closer to her. Zeo safek kedushin. That's called a doubt about kedushin. What is safek gerushin? What's a doubt about a divorce? So you're not sure if you're divorced. Let's say, cause of the ksav yado. Let's say he wrote the get in his own hand. Ve'eno of Edom, but there are no witnesses. He just wrote her the divorce. Biblically speaking, it's a divorce, but the rabbis require there to be witnesses on it. Let's say there's witnesses, but there's no date on it. Let's say there's only one witness. In all these cases, those safek gerushin, we're not sure if they're actually divorced, and so therefore the co-wife is going to require chalitza. So the Gemara is going to discuss this Mishnah at length over the next 2 days. Or the next day, and so we'll pick this up, God willing, tonight. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to address them. Any questions?